Hey friends, what's going on? A quick lesson today on bass note strumming. And this is a general technique that I think is great to learn, especially if you're a beginner at guitar. But even if you're many years in, it wasn't until kind of recently when I became aware of this. But check this out. I made a PDF one-pager for you. 5 different steps to learn this technique. You can get it over at my website, playsongnotes.com. It's lesson 371. And the basic idea with this is no matter what chord you're playing, you don't always need to strum all the strings all the time, okay? Instead of doing this with an E major, for example, we can instead pluck just the bass note, then do a full strum. And if you repeat that, it can just lead to a nice change of pace with the sound, right? And you could use that on an A chord. You know, E and A are gonna sound good together, and then go to a B7, and back to an E. Okay? Now there's all kinds of additional ways you could sort of take this and run with it. You could do alternating bass notes. You can add in some brushier strums on the thinnest strings, as well as you could use full strums every now and then for that extra dynamic punch. And I'm going to show you all that in the next couple minutes in this lesson. 5 different steps. I'm going to start with the absolute basics. I'm going to crank it up, dial up the complexity a little bit to get you to a point where at the end you're going to feel comfortable knowing the lay of the land, so that any song you're playing, you're going to feel empowered and free to use these bass note strums if you feel like it's something that's going to sound good. But again, it's a great skill to have, so get the PDF over at my website, playsongnotes.com. Let's zoom on in and look at this, and I'll see you all on the other side. Let's go. This first diagram is basically showing the chord concept as it applies to the chords of G and C and D, okay? Now, these are 3 arbitrarily selected chords, to be honest, right? This is the 1-4-5 in the key of G. You don't need to understand what I meant by saying that, but the point is, these are 3 chords that sound together. But my ultimate point is, what I'm about to show you, you can use on any single chord you play. But the main idea of bass note strumming is, again, you have your chord, right? A G chord, 3rd fret, 2nd fret, open, 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 3rd fret. From thickest to thinnest strings. Now, bass note strumming means you basically want to pluck just the bass note of the chord and then do a full strum. At its simplest, it's that. Now, there's all kinds of additional questions you might have about, like, what about the strum pattern, what about the time signature, and all that sort of thing. I can show you those later, but the fundamental idea, you strum the bass note, and then you strum the full chord. With any chord you're playing, you can do this, right? For a G, it would look like this. Now, for a C, C is going to use the thinnest 5 strings. So what is the bass note of C? It is the 3rd fret of this 5th string. So we would pluck just that note and then do the full strum, okay? I'm gonna get to how you can sort of do some exercises and repeat it to give you sort of some muscle memory build up there. But let me talk about the basics for one more minute here. For a D chord, okay, what is the bass note of this chord? I'm asking you now. It's the thinnest 4 strings, open, 2nd, 3rd, 2nd. The bass note is gonna be the 4th string. Okay, so we want to pluck that open 4th string and then strum all 4 strings. Okay, so this is the fundamental idea. And whether you're playing any of these chords or if you're playing a D minor 7, right, the bass note is going to be the 5th fret of the 5th string. It's a D. Okay, or you're playing something up here, you know, this is a C major. That's the bass note, okay? So any chord you can do this on. Now the second part of my chord sheet here, my diagram, I talk about this idea of sometimes you might want to play the bass 2 or 3 strings instead. So you have a G chord. What I have here is basically the thinnest 2 or 3 strings I have in parentheses. That means you basically want to just strum them really lightly, a light brush. If you only do 2 strings, that's okay. If you're kind of maybe doing 4, that's okay. But this brings in this idea of you're not always doing a full, strong down strum. Sometimes you just want to do a light brush. And what we can do is combine that light brush with a full strum. So I'm just going between the G, C, and D as I have written out here. Again, it's on this light brush. I'm just sort of getting the thickest couple strings of whatever chord I'm in. And you know, the light brush is an important part of the dynamics here because it's going to make it basically, it's not going to be too loud. And what that does is it leaves some room. So when you do a full strum on the next strum, you hear that difference, right? Light, heavy. Now, let's talk about some ways you can use this. The first thing I would recommend when you're practicing this is basically to bring in, say, a 4-count measure, right? 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and there's this idea of basically on the 1 count, we want to do the bass note, and then on the 2 count, we want to do the full strum. And then you want to keep your count going, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Repeat, but keep your counting steady. And that's the important part, is that we're keeping that counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're not stopping. It's steady. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. When you get comfortable with this, what you can do is start transitioning between chords. So say we have a G and a C. Okay? We can do for the G for 1 measure and then the C for 1 measure. So normally that might sound like this. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But with the bass note strumming, we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And as I have at the beginning of diagram number 3 here, I talk about this thing called a rest. In music terms, rest just refers to a time when you're not playing any notes. That 3 and 4 count is a time when you're resting, and that's actually a great time to practice transitioning to the next chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? This might not seem too exciting at first, but what we can do is use that 3 and 4 count to do another bass note strum. So you could do 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This gives you less time to change chords, but if it's still giving you trouble, what you can do is slow down your counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? This is a great exercise, and if you're having trouble with the changes, slow down your counting. In my opinion, it's really important to get just comfortable with keeping a steady tempo, even if you have to make that tempo very slow. Because 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. What we have here is a steady groove. It's slow, but compare it to this, right? If you're going 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. If you're doing that, you're losing that groove, and it's just not going to sound as great, especially if someone's listening to you play, because our minds, I think naturally, our ears want to sort of look for that pattern, that consistent rhythm, right? That steady tempo, even if it's slow. Slow is okay, nothing wrong with slow, but slow and steady is important, and we don't want to break it. So this is a great thing to practice. A definite skill it's going to work on is your sort of aim with your pick. It is tricky when you're starting off, especially to target that 5th string and then do a full strum, then go back to targeting it, right? You want it to be a clean pluck. But that's basically the idea of bringing in a steady rhythm for practice. Now the next part of this could be bringing in some light strums on the thinnest couple strings. Remember in step 2 how we talked about the brush that could be on the bass strings? You likewise can do it on these thinnest strings. So say here we're going to do a bass, down, up, bass, down, up, bass, down, up, bass, down, up. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. Now a lot of you have asked me, how do I get a lighter up strum? It just sounds too harsh. One of the secrets, and this applies to down strums as well sometimes, is you don't need to strum all the strings. You can just sort of do the thinnest couple strings. With up strums, this is really important, but even with down strums, it's okay. Get a nice, only focus on those thinnest strings. Try to allow some give to the pick. See how my pick is sort of like bending? It's not very, this is very rigid. A little bit too much, right? So 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and likewise, we can change the chords from G to a C. to a D, and G. Okay? And again, this could work for any chord. Say you want to do an E, do an A. You can do the same thing. Bass note. Okay, so that's a very helpful thing to do. Now I'm not showing it here, but you also could do an alternating bass note with this technique. So say you're going from a G. On that 1 and 3 count, I'm just playing the bass note. But what you could do is go from the 5th string to the 6th string. So 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. Now that brings in an entirely different skill, which is being able to alternate strings steadily and intermix that with strumming. And that is difficult. Don't feel like you should have to get this overnight. Like this can take months and months and months of practice or longer until you're totally comfortable with it. But I want you to know that this exists as a skill that you can move into, right? And the last diagram I have here in item number 5 is this idea of adding in a full strum. So what we're going to do is on the 1 count of this pattern, we're going to do the bass note. On the 2 count, we're going to do a full strum. And on the and 4 and, we're going to do an up, down, up on the thinnest few strings. So if I'm just doing a G, that would sort of, actually before I do the chord, it would be like 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. Right? Bass note full, brush, 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 bass note full, brush, 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 bass note full, brush, brush, brush. Okay, if we did the G chord. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. Okay, and this is one of my go-to favorite strumming patterns. Is a bass down, up down, a bass down, up down, a bass down, up down, a bass down. And you could do it again in any key. Say I'm in the key of C. Whoa. Okay, any chord, any strumming progression, any chord and any chord progression you can do this on, okay? This is the one pattern you want to use though, but again, bass note down, brush, brush, bass note down. And that's 2 count is where you want a really full strum, and on the N4N you just want a light brush over here. Okay, so this, again, get the PDF at my website for this, and the main idea, once more, with this whole thing is anytime you're learning a chord, say you're learning an E chord, E major, down strum is where you want to start. It's a great thing when you're getting started with guitar, right? After that, you can bring in some down-up strums. But with the up strums, remember what I said here. Look at step number 4 when I'm talking about these lighter brushes. Even if you're doing up strums, on the thinnest couple strings, that sounds way better than the full up strum too much. Because if you're doing, if all your strums sound like that and they're using all the strings, it's just overkill. So you want to use the bass note, the full strum, and sometimes the lighter brushes. And again, it can lead to a nice sort of strumming pattern and feel overall there. So that's bass note strumming. I hope this is helpful. You can use this in all kinds of scenarios, and you can expand it, like the boom chukka sound you get with lots of Johnny Cash songs, you know. This is fundamentally using this skill. It's bass, down, up, bass, down, up, bass, down, up, bass, down, up. I'm also doing some palm muting down here, and I'm only doing the sort of thickest 4 strings of my guitar. And alternating bass note as well. But Again, that's just one of many examples of where this general technique can be used. So I want to introduce this to you. Again, 371 is the lesson number. Just go to playsongnotes.com, punch in 371, and you can find a link to get this PDF. So thanks to all of you who are supporting me on Patreon through your monthly or annual support. It means a lot, and all these sort of technique and theory and riff and exercise PDFs I'm making, I trust they're valuable for you. So I'm going to head on out now. Again, find this at my website, and I'll see you all in the next video. Y'all take care, and bye-bye.